Hello there friends, Mr. E here, and today we're going to talk about, not a build, it's about this guy. The Vanguard. Okay, what's the deal with this guy? Well, I don't like him. I'm gonna be straight with you. I'm gonna keep it real here. Of course, this is another in the apparently ongoing video series where I just copy whatever Reginald made for his recent video and then I comment on that. So I'm like the vulture of Darktide right now. That sounds pretty cool actually. But this enemy is not fun. And I think that is kind of like the key thing I want to drill in on today. Of course, Reginald has a much more numeric and mechanical breakdown of like this enemy and how he functions, etc., etc. That's all cool. Go watch this video and learn about that. But for me, the important thing for me, and I think for many players, for 99.9999% of players, is that this guy just feels shitty to play against, right? That's number one on the list. Is like this guy feels like dog doo-doo in order to actually fight, and I wanted to showcase a little bit why that is today and how it's flawed. And then there's another big issue that I have about the game's like direction and balance that we'll touch on after that. But of these two main issues, the first one is obviously the more impactful for most players. The second one is more to my particular flavor, but I think that my opinion would make the game better for other players as well. So let's first touch on the first issue here, which is why this guy feels so bad to fight. So if you're unaware, this guy has two phases. What they've done is more or less they've replaced an enemy in the bulwark that is uninteracted to fight, but is supposed to be interacted to fight with an enemy of the same problem. This guy is supposed to be interactive to fight, but ends up being uninteractive to fight. Now but they have this problem in different ways. So the bulwark, he is supposed to be interactive to fight in the way that you're supposed to exploit his weakness. You're supposed to wait for vulnerabilities, or you're supposed to use some sort of ability in order to open up his shield and get some damage done, and then do the whole song and dance. And that works well enough when there's one bulwark, but when there's more, it just kind of falls apart. And this is just kind of broken because stagger and such can reset his shield, so he ends up just ending up in this loop of getting back to that default stance where his shield is covering his entire body and wasting another 5 seconds of your precious life. And this is just kind of ends up being, instead of a dance, an elaborate dance of like, you know, dodging and waiting for the opening like a Dark Souls boss, you end up with a situation where you are just sitting around looking at your watch and being like, holy shit, when is this guy gonna roll the one attack where I can do it? And if you get unlucky, if you're just the subject of the little shield bash attack and rather than the big open swing, or if you are just too far away or out of position where you can't exploit the weakness when he opens himself up, you just don't get that shot, and then you gotta wait some more time for the guy to do the attack. And because he's so large and occupies so much space, he can block for a bunch of other enemies inadvertently, and it just sucks. It slows the game to a crawl. You are playing on his time, right? And that's bad because we're the main characters. We are the players who are playing the game. He's supposed to be like, we're supposed to be in control of him or have ways to control him, and we really can't, right, in the most part. So that's why the bulwark sucks. And the Vanguard encounters that same problem, but it's because of what happens when you break his shield. So let's demonstrate here. So this guy has a shield health bar. Once the shield is broken, watch this. Okay, now he enters into this state where he has immense stagger resistance. Nothing that I do, well, some things that I do, but like most attacks do not stagger him at all. And what this means is that for the vast majority of new players, and you know, this is a pretty average way to fight this guy as a new player, right? Is to do like spam heavy attacks and maybe not be able to hit the head, because the headshot hitbox is really hard to hit on this guy without hitting the shield for certain weapons. But then you end up doing this, and you're like, why isn't this guy dying? Holy shit, he has so much HP. Now, I have health bars on. Imagine if you're a new player and you don't have health bars. You have no idea what the fuck is going on with this guy. He's left standing after who knows how many blows, and that is that is a result of having probably just far too much HP and too much damage resistance. I think having that HP and damage resistance is also a big problem for not making him very exploitable. Like right there, when that guy opens himself up and I have my morph attack there, like this morph attack is devastating. If you get a crit on that, it's really devastating. However, because this guy has such massive damage reduction, I think it's like 50% on his headshot hitbox, it barely hurts him. It barely tickles him at all. It takes like a third of his HP, and that just feels bad. Like these enemies, just like bulwarks, should be able to be punished enough by missing one attack that you can kill them with your most powerful attack in one attack back. And if you miss that opportunity on this weapon, it can be really, really bad. And so most average players are not doing that. They're just spamming into the shield, and then you end up with these unstaggerable assholes who are going to come at you and be really, really annoying to fight. And yeah, so that's the first major problem with these guys, is that they end up being interactive in the inverse way to the Bulwark, because the Bulwark just kind of doesn't do anything and stands around all day. These guys, once you break their shield, they get to do whatever they want. They can just walk up and freely attack you while you cannot stagger them, and that feels terrible. It removes one whole element of how you combat enemies in this game, which is to, you know, actually stagger them and block them and parry them back. Of course, you can still block them when they're in their shieldless mode, but I think that the design intent here, pretty clearly, is to keep them for as long as possible in this mode. Because in this mode, whenever you hit their shield, they can be staggered with even the lightest of attacks. So that's nice. I like that. I like that attention. But the problem is that for most weapons, it's far too hard to kill them before that shield gets taken off, and then that puts them into that unstaggerable state where they basically just get free cheap attacks on you. Like, yeah, this is probably what an average player fights these guys like, right? They just get walloped on a couple times for free because they just get free shots afterwards. So yeah, that's the big problem here, is the what the fuck, why are they unstaggerable? And what this has led to, and I'm certain this is many players like lived experience with these guys, is when I'm fighting in game and I'm like going around, I got my claw and I'm like, yeah, and I claw through a bunch of enemies. And then there's like 3 dudes left standing. I'm like, what the hell? Because the game has been so glitchy lately, I'm second guessing myself. I'm like, wait a second, like, hold on. Is like am I about to like crash? Am I about to DC? Why are these enemies still attacking? Shouldn't they be staggered? Like something's wrong. What's happening? Is there a bug with the cord claw? And then I realized, oh, it's shieldless Vanguards. They're still alive after that attack because they have so much fucking HP and so much stagger immunity, and it just feels weird. It feels jank, and it's unintuitive for an enemy the size that they are, the profile they have. It looks just like the regular enemy, especially when they don't have the shield, the regular like scab bruiser. And so your brain doesn't read it as elites. Also, as a side note, there is no way in hell these guys should not be classed as elites for the purposes of quote-unquote killing elites in like penances and talent activations and stuff. It's ridiculous because they are way harder to fight than shotgunners are, and shotgunners are elites. So how is that fair? And they're supposed to replace bulwarks, so you're like basically cucking people on both sides. You're removing some elites from the game people are using to get their resets, and then you're not classing them as elites. Doesn't seem very fair to me. Anyway, so I digress on that point. Let's go on to the second point, which to me, it might be a little bit more of a personal, like something that I am like on the warpath against, but that is what this does to players' choices, player selection. Fat Shark, even in a recent blog post, made a big deal about the fact that what had happened is they've added more and more enemies to the game and more types of elites and specials and all that stuff that has ultimately steered the game in favor of like biasing players to use only certain types of weapons, only certain types of tools, because they're so effective against those enemies, right? So AoE, damage over time, explosions, stuff like that, as I call it, slop weapons, in order to counteract these threats. And they said they wanted to step away from that so that like players had an easier time using other stuff. Well, if you watch Reginald's video, which I do encourage you to do, what you'll notice is that he does a little bit of a showcase at some point, talking about how the Relic Blade and the Thunder Hammer deal with these enemies, and it's terribly. Slow attacking weapons in this game have always had a bias against them, right? It's just hard to effectively make space and land the attacks, and the Relic Blade only clings to relevancy because its attack patterns and its damages are so solid, and it's just such a like solid baseline weapon. The slow attacks can be made up for. But when you introduce these Vanguards, when you introduce effectively bulwarks, right? Bulwarks just cuck that sword and cuck the Relic Blade in general, because it nullifies your big, long, slow attack that you spent a lot of time charging up. It's gone now, right? You just eats it entirely. And so yeah, these guys, they are disproportionately punishing to weapons like the Relic Blade, like the Thunder Hammer. Oh my god, the Thunder Hammer has a nightmare time against these guys. Like the Heavy Sword, right? All these weapons that are lower tier already. This guy makes it harder for you to play. So you just saw the Transonic Blades there, right? I demonstrated that a second ago. The Transonic Blades, we can play with the Transonic Blades in this class. They're not optimal, But you could play a very similar build with the combat blade. I think this is, by the way, this is my most recent build. Go check it out. This is obviously here instead, but I'm just doing it for demonstration so the servo skull doesn't steal my kills. But I offered in that build that you could swap out the transonic blade with the dagger. And I think the dagger is a more capable weapon in general. The dagger's always been one of the S tier weapons of the game. And I'll give you one guess as to how easy it is to fight this enemy with the dagger versus the transonic blades, right? And obviously the answer is way easier. So all I have to do is hit this guy at all, right? Just hit him at all. And eventually attacks will get through. And because he gets staggered and those bleeds will happen, even easier than that perhaps is just crouching down and hitting him in the feet, or just like looking down and hitting him in the feet. You could even just block one attack and then follow in with a bunch of push stabs, right? The dagger is already so good. And yet then here we go again with a weapon that can just put a bunch of damage over time effects on this guy and then walk away like nothing even happened, and he's like an absolute joke to deal with. Even better than that is, okay, like look at the weapons that are available in terms of like on the Skitarii alone, right? I could fight him with the power sword, which I have not delved into quite yet, but at least masteries wise. I could fight him with the power sword, and I could do, you know, I could wait for him to open his vulnerability and then go in with some power attacks and do that sort of thing. You know, all this song and dance. I could do all that sort of thing. But I could also just use one of the more dominant weapons in the class, the Shock Maul, and this is the experience that I get fighting this guy. That's it. That's how you fight these guys with the Shock Maul. It's ridiculous. This guy is, just like the Bulwark, he's biased towards making weapons that are already good even better. And the Bulwark did the same thing to the game too. Because Bulwarks are so big and because their shields block so many types of attacks, weapons like hit scan bullet weapons, you know, weapons that don't penetrate bulwarks, weapons that don't go around the shield are disfavored against. So where did all the infantry auto guns go? Where did all the hellbores and the, you know, the infantry las guns, like those sort of things? Why aren't those as in favor as plasma gun and recon las gun on vet? Why does the Ogren use rumbler and the and point blank barrage with the twin link stubber and fire instead of like ripper guns? Why does the Psyker use you know, the flame staff all the time? Well, it's because those sort of AoE effects, those damage over time effects, ignore these stupid shields. They ignore all the random bullshit that would block your attacks, and they just do the damage directly. So of course this enemy gets absolutely destroyed by flame staff. Of course this enemy gets absolutely destroyed by rumbler spam and by recon las gunfire and by, I mean, as you saw there, even just the basic servo skull itself. If you just like let the servo skull do its thing, that like it's able to just completely destroy these guys because of the burn stacks and stuff. The electricity, like all this stuff, all these extra damage over time effects that very privileged weapons already have is really, really good against this guy that's annoying and challenging for the weapons that are kind of in the bottom to mid half of the barrel. And that's the part that I think bothers me a little bit more than they just feel bad, is that it's going to push more players into using this stuff that is already so boring and overused in the game. They're going to have a bad time fighting against them with the transonic blades, and they're going to say, oh, the transonic blades feel terrible. Well, I mean, the transonic blades, honestly, as a weapon, they don't feel terrible. It's just that we've gotten spoiled by a game that's made all these weapons so insanely good, and because other games or other weapons like the dagger can just do the fight for you. They can make it so much easier to fight a fight like this as compared to the transonic blades where you actually have to work for it. And I know it might not be a popular opinion, but I kind of want a game where, like, when you play with the Relic Blade on the Zealot, you are working for it, right? You're working for the results that you get. But an enemy like this, or Bulwarks in general, they just shut that shit down. There's no reward to fighting like that, rather than you know, devoting yourself to just playing a class that can circumvent the shield entirely. And yeah, it feels bad. So anyway, that's what I had to say about the Vanguard. Needless to say, if I were to change this guy, the first thing I would do is I would make him much more vulnerable in terms of hitting him over and around his shield. He can keep the same HP, I guess, but his headshot hitbox should be omega more vulnerable than it is, especially with the scab guy, to punish him when he misses his shield. Because for most players, hitting that headshot is actually a challenge. The other thing is probably just reducing the health overall. They should not have, or that or making them classed as elites, so that you get credit for killing them as elites because they have elite worthy HP. They have like Mauler levels of HP. And then the third thing is removing that stupid stagger immunity they get once their shield is broken. That's just ridiculous. Like, we don't need more stagger immune enemies in the game. I thought they would have learned this with introducing, the red buff. Basically, they've created like the red buff on Havoc, but for like a regular infantry enemy, where he enters into his second phase and his boss health bar fills back up and he's like, I'm gonna get you now, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I don't think they have, because they introduced that stagger immunity back to pink, and no one likes stagger immunity, Fat Shark. It's really, really uninteractive. It feels terrible. It takes away whole playstyles in the game. So they need to tone that back. Like, he cannot be stagger immune. Something else can happen when his shield gets broken. I don't know. Maybe he pulls out a second sword. I don't fucking know. But don't make him stagger immune, because it feels like junk, and it's probably just a terrible experience for players all around, because it's just confusing. How the fuck is this guy not getting staggered? I just broke his shield. He should be like wide open. I don't know. So yeah, there's my overall thoughts. Just a little bit of a rant there. You aren't alone. This guy feels bad, and hopefully they'll get him fixed up. And at any rate, he is definitely in better shape than the Plasma Gunner was on release, so at least we have that as some solace. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Mr. B out of here. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.